everyone. Welcome to the SharePoint Framework and JavaScript Special Interest Group weekly meeting. It's September 15th, 2016. I'm Patrick Rogers. I'm joined by Vesa Juvonen, and we're here to talk through a couple of great topics as always, and then we've got a few questions for you folks in the community on how we're going to move forward with these meetings. So, moving right into what we got. Want to talk a little bit about what we are, what the JavaScript Special Interest Group is all about. We've been evolving over the last 2 to 3 weeks now to start to bring in a lot more of the SharePoint framework front and center, and that coincided with the public preview release of that SharePoint framework, and for which I believe Update 3 has now dropped. So that's out there if you want to grab the latest and greatest updates around that. And so we're starting to pull that into the conversation a little bit more as folks are going to be using that more, going to naturally start to have more questions around that, going to want to try new things or looking for new features. So we want to make sure we highlight that as a more sort of clear part of the discussion and provide a way for folks to get updates on this call about the latest of what's going on with the SharePoint framework. And luckily enough, we've got Vesa tied right in with that team now, so we're able to get some really great kind of sort of insider information a little bit, sometimes maybe ahead of some other folks, which I think is a really great perk of attending these meetings. And the other thing we're still going to focus on, that's not going to change, is the JavaScript core component. We are at a place with that where we're sort of I'll call it, we're at a fairly stable place. We don't have large, rapid blocks of development happening as we did in the past. But we still want to focus on that, keep expanding that, keep improving that. We do get some issues reported now and then. So that is still very much supported, very much a part of what we're doing. But it is just part of the story now as we bring in a little bit more focus on the SharePoint framework. So those are our two core pieces we're going to talk about in these meetings. You've got two links down there at the bottom. The first goes to the, what are we calling it now, the Microsoft Tech Community, but that link will always work wherever we end up, so that aka.ms SharePoint PnP Community. Be sure to join us there. That is your replacement for Yammer. So if you've been posting questions and asking things on Yammer, that's the new location to do the same sort of activities. I'll confess I'm still mentally transitioning there, so if there are questions kind of pending, I will try and follow up with those, but do encourage, as folks are doing on Yammer, for the community to reach out and help each other. And we've also got dev.office.com/SharePoint, which is a great hub for all things SharePoint and SharePoint development a little bit more specifically. So you'll get a lot of links there, a lot of SharePoint framework information, as well as general sort of SharePoint updates and things like that, again, focused around the development side of things. So we've not left anything behind. We've brought in a little bit more focus on the SharePoint framework. Still great, same great group focused on client-side development and all those great tools that are available. And we, continue to be part of the larger SharePoint Patterns and Practices program. So no changes there as well. So moving into our agenda for this week, SharePoint Framework, like we mentioned a little bit earlier, latest updates around that, guidance, things like that. Great chance to sort of start to think about questions for the later open discussion. We'll do our update about the core component. All good. And then we've got one demo today, I believe, from Waldeck, who's going to do sort of CRUD demo around who I don't see on the call right now, so this is going to be a fun demo.
We'll see. Waldeck is joining slightly late, most likely. He had some family errands to run, so he should be joining on time still. We'll see.
Okay, perfect. If not, we'll ad hoc a demo. But so Waldeck, great demo again from him, and then of course we'll close out with open discussion, which is a great opportunity for everybody who joins the call to ask questions, provide feedback, either on the SharePoint framework, core component, things like that, and just general, open discussion as the title says. So moving right into it, I'll pass this off to Vesa to give us an update on the SharePoint framework developer preview.
Thank you. So let's have a look on what happened actually within the last week, comparing to the last SharePoint framework, last special interest group. So first of all, in the SPFx world, let's see if I can get these things to remove. So obviously the SharePoint docs are updated gradually. So if you go to the dev.office.com/SharePoint, you will find all of the needed guidance and documentation around the SharePoint framework. And we want to mention that actually now in every single week, because based on social media questions, people are not quite up to date on where this material is and where you can actually find the tutorials and all of that. There is tutorials like mentioned. There's going to be future articles. There's going to be additional tutorials. There's documentation and all of that. Also, the SharePoint webhook information, which is in developer preview as well, is underneath the dev.office.com/SharePoint. And that was released, I think, last Thursday, 2 hours after our call. I knew that that's going to happen, so we had a kind of a sneak. It's coming pretty soon, but we were unable to actually explain when. And then contributions for this one are actually welcome. So if you find any typos, if you find any issues, if you actually want to even write an article, that's absolutely possible as well. So in the github.com/SharePoint/SPDevDocs, that's actually the source of the dev.office.com/SharePoint. So we actually automatically have a publishing mechanism. So whenever we merge stuff from the master branch to the staging branch to the master branch, that stuff is getting published in the dev.office.com/SharePoint. So it's a fully automated system, which helps on giving the flexibility on any issues or any additional articles extremely fast. Not like it used to be with MSD and for months and months and months waiting for any updates to actually happen. So this is extremely good. The other thing, what has happened, so last night, last morning, depending again on which time zone you are sitting, we released a new drop of the SharePoint framework, so drop number 3. And that has some additional fixes, it has some additional capabilities and stabilization things for the SharePoint framework. We're closing into the Ignite conference, which is within 1.5 weeks. We, by the way, do have a PnP booth in the extensibility section as well. So feel free to drop by and see live demos and have questions around anything on a SharePoint customizations. But most likely we will not have additional drops, or I would doubt that there will be additional drops before the Ignite, because we want to stabilize the platform. We want to make sure that there's no ad hoc last-minute changes within our demos, which we'll kind of present within the breakouts as well. And I think Ignite sessions are all getting recorded, so you can watch those later on by yourself as well. Good. Moving along on the changes within the week. If I can actually get this moving, something happened. There we go. So SharePoint Framework Webport sample repository is now open for the community contributions, and we are actually during this week. I think we got 2 to 3 additional contributions from a community side. So individual samples which are showing scenarios. So there's a scenarios for Power BI integration with SharePoint Framework web parts. There's the search web part which Elio presented last week. You can go and have a look on the recording if you're interested. It's over there. There's Waldex, a few examples already, and there's a few other ones as well. And we're looking into adding those there as well. Or additional samples in the SharePoint Framework web part sample repository as we move along. There will be also engineering-driven samples in that repo, but some of them are now on the final review. Some of them are available in the dev branch, but there will be additional samples available all the time. Some things around the existing assets which we have available. So if you go to dev.office.com/SharePoint, obviously please do remember that address. That's relatively easily rememberable. what's the right word for that. But you can find in future all of the SharePoint related topics there. We'll link the PnP stuff, we'll link webcast, we'll link all the additional articles there as well. For the SharePoint framework itself, there's already existing tutorials. So right now we do acknowledge that it's a really early developer preview. But if you want to kind of catch up on what's actually happening, even though you don't have time to really start playing with the SharePoint framework, I would really encourage you to go through the tutorials 1, 2, and 3, and 4, because then you get a nice understanding on, okay, this is what the tooling is all about, this is how the stuff works, and I'll come back to that whenever it's more stable, because I need to work on the existing customization models. Obviously, if you're free to follow up on the other tutorials as well. If you rather want to watch a video where the tutorials are walked through, that's available as well. So if you go AKMS SPFx videos, you will land to the PnP YouTube channel, where we have the tutorials in a specific playlist as well. So you're able to actually walk them through and watch them from the YouTube. And then we do have webcasts for the SharePoint framework already available. Some of them were recorded before the developer preview, but the material is still pretty much absolutely valid, and we keep on releasing additional webcasts on specific topics in the future as well. But as an example, we cover what you should be learning, or how to build a simple SharePoint framework client-side web part, and we have a few additional things in the queue as well. So really good stuff on understanding how things are actually working. We do acknowledge and absolutely we understand, if you are coming from a SharePoint background, if you're coming, let's say, from a SharePoint server-side background, there is a learning curve, but the PnP is there to help. If you're coming from a web, let's say, from a web development background, not from a SharePoint server-side background, the PnP is there to help on what does the SharePoint actually provide. So we try to be there on getting started. We try to be there on the more advanced topics as well. And that's what the PnP is all about. It's the community work and helping you guys to understand if you have any questions around specific topics. Can we move on, Patrick, on the following slides, now that you're my lovely assistant on the slides? So a few things. Now the opportunity is to contribute around SharePoint framework. So obviously testing tutorials, your input is absolutely more than welcome. We do have an issue list for the dev docs. You're able to report issues. You're able to even submit pull requests for edits. Have a discussion in Stack Exchange or in the techcommunity.microsoft.com. Techcommunity.microsoft.com is the replacement for the Office 365 technical network in Yammer. Today is the final day when the Yammer is open. I don't know actually what's going to happen later today or tomorrow, but the story at least seems to be that if you try to go to the old Yammer links, they will redirect you to the techcommunity.microsoft.com, which is a pity, because it means that the old questions and answers will be lost. And trust me, we know that's how awful the situation is, but somebody has made that decision. Obviously, test platform, demo your stuff in the PnP special interest group calls. So if you have a demo, if you have something what you want to show, if you want to have something which you want to talk about, maybe. I've been running into this kind of an issue, and let's walk it through. These special interest group calls are absolutely available for you to do that. Submit changes on existing tutorial articles, submit samples to sample repository in the SharePoint organization, absolutely valid way of contributing as well. And we acknowledge your contributions, and within the monthly PnP messaging, you will absolutely get credits out of those contributions as well. So we'll get you and optionally your company mentioned. As an example, in the upcoming Ignite, we have like 25 companies explicitly called out within the slides around the PnP session who, persons from those companies has contributed to the PnP initiative, and we want to absolutely make sure that the companies are getting credits out of it as well. And yes, tell us your feedback. So if something is painful, if something is horrible, tell us. So we're trying to help you. We do know that, especially if you're coming from the classic SharePoint development side, it might feel pretty challenging to learn the new stuff, and then let's have an open discussion. What do we need? What's the guidance? What's lacking? And all of that. The PnP is here to help, and personally, I work within the SharePoint engineering, so I can actually bypass all the feedback to the right channels as well. But good. Moving on, Patrick, on the following things. I think we're heading to the JS Core site.
So as I was saying with the weekly stand-up quiet week, but do look forward to getting some more stuff. I've been traveling this week for work, so I myself haven't had much time, but still working on writing tests and continuing to grow that library as we talked about earlier. Mike has a great question. What is the use case for the JavaScript provisioning engine? So to me, I don't really see a use case for using the provisioning, for example, in a browser. I think that's going to be a very timeout likely scenario. But where I do see it is if somebody wanted to write a Node.js provisioning service, I think that would be a very valid use case. So again, it runs server side, but it's something that you could call out to. You could have a front end for, much like you would, if you were writing a provisioning provider hosted app in, normal .NET and CSOM, you could do something very similar in Node. So I think there is a use case. I have said in the past, and I 100% do not think provisioning from the browser is necessarily the right idea. Though possibly once the provisioning functionality were to be in JS Core library, we could move forward with it might be a quicker way to create and configure a list, right? If we got such parity that you could create the XML template, drop it into a method, and get your list with all the fields and everything. I don't know. It doesn't exist right now. I don't know how long that would take in JavaScript, so maybe that's something we could do from the browser. I don't know, but I sort of see it as running from like a Node.js server side as a provider-hosted add-in would run in a normal .NET CSOM. So that's my use case, would really be for somebody.
Quick comment.
Yep.
Quick comment, Patrick, on that one, because I think that we get so many questions around why can't I create a site collection using JavaScript API? Why can't I do a sub-site using JavaScript API? And I think you clearly nailed it. The problem is that the JavaScript, you would be stealing over the browser. And creating a site or a site collection, site collection especially, might be taking 15 minutes. So would we actually then rely on the fact that the end user would be waiting for 15 minutes for looking in the GIF animation before the site collection is done? And that's really why we want to rather extend this as an asynchronous process. But anyway, just reinforcing what you were saying, Patrick.
Yep, and I'm sure we could find some very interesting GIFs for people to watch.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
And then, so finally, just talking a little bit about opportunities to contribute in the core library. Still very much write a web part and demo it on this call. So we've had some uptake the last few weeks on that. But if you've written a web part, big or small, demo it on this call. Let us know. Let myself know. Let Vesa know. We'll get you a slot on here to demo. We really want to start highlighting the work the community is doing, because I think we all benefit and learn from each other in that regard. Like I've said before, bonus points in a way if you use the JS Core framework in that web part. Love to see folks starting to use that. And actually, I should have done a slide on this. We, for the 104 library, we got our first version targeted metrics back in the way we're doing it with the CSOM, and so we're being used currently in 33 tenants. Some people are using it the past versions, but we've already had 33 tenants, 32 if you don't count mine, using the latest JS Core. So that's very exciting. It doesn't sound like a huge number, but that's live use, and in some of those cases, thousands and thousands of requests through the JS Core library. So exciting to see that usage get picked up, and I think we'll see a little bit more as the SharePoint framework kind of gets out there and grows a little bit. Again, as I've mentioned fairly consistently now, testing, use the library feedback, report issues, help write tests. I'm working on content types. Like I've said in the past, just comment on issue 40 to grab an area so we don't have conflicting work. And then still looking for somebody who's interested in helping us style our documentation. The document generation is now part of the project, and looking to enhance that styling and that layout. I did some work there, and I will confess very openly, I'm not a CSS and styling guru. So if one or more of you folks are, would love to have your help, and I do believe there's still an open issue around that. So question now for the folks on the call. We've got 32 participants, which is fantastic this week. Really love to see that participation. But one of the questions we've been talking about on the core team is this has been a weekly meeting now for probably not quite a whole year, but close. And some weeks we have a lot of folks, like this week, other weeks less folks, which is great. But would it make sense to move this to every 2 weeks? We have a lot of patterns and practices meetings now. We realized in the core team on our calendars, which means for you folks that all participate in these, you have a lot of meetings on your calendar now. So we thought of pulling that back a little bit, making sure, because each week, some weeks we have a lot of great updates, other weeks a little bit less. So moving it to bi-weekly would really allow us to have a very sort of much more meatier meeting each time. So that's kind of our thinking. We would do our best to communicate that out, make sure we don't lose folks in that process. But what do you all think, folks on the call, about moving this to a bi-weekly schedule? So we'd go every 2 weeks for this meeting. I will pause for feedback. Feedback, go. I agree. That's a good idea. Makes sense. Sounds good. Feedback, all positive. Love it.
Yeah. That looks good. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, we will absolutely update the meeting request to reflect this, and we will do our best to communicate this, probably including myself and/or Vesa joining in those off weeks for at least the first few missed weeks, like the first few skip weeks, with a slide to help remind folks and let folks know that might have the old invite saved on their calendar. So we will do our best to communicate this.
And we'll do a proper announcements in the, yes. The other thing, if you guys can hear me.
You're going in and out.
Audio, it's on red on my side. But
you're cutting in and out pretty bad, at least on my end.
Never mind then. Okay, cool.
Yeah, you're really in and out, unfortunately.
Go on.
Okay, so thanks everybody for the feedback on this. No decision at this point, but look for us to say something. Maybe stay weekly around Ignite in case of some big announcements. I don't think we're going to make this change prior to Ignite, regardless, just from a messaging standpoint. I don't know that we're going to get it out in the next week or 2 weeks. So, but probably the end of, what month are we in now? September? So starting probably in October, we'll back this down to once every 2 weeks. But we'll let everybody know for sure, and we'll have as much detailed comms around that as we can. Again, definitely don't want to miss anyone or make anyone feel like we've totally canceled the meeting in between. So we'll do our best to catch those situations. So thanks everybody for the feedback on that. And now we've got a demo from Waldeck. Waldeck, are you all set?
Always, as I'll ever be.
Awesome. So I think you're a presenter if you want to take over and let her rip.
Yeah. Let me know when you can see my screen. That's always the question when on Mac. I like the demos, Mike. Yes, thank you, Mike. All right, let me know when you can see my screen. According to my computer, you should be seeing it.
I've got it now.
All right, everyone else as well?
Yep.
3, 2, 1. All right. All right, so currently we're working on a sample that illustrates how you can do SharePoint CRUD operations in SharePoint Framework client-side web parts, and we don't have a favorite. So because we couldn't reach an agreement, and that's a joke, we will have a sample that shows how you can do that with Angular, how you can do that with no specific framework, which is the option that you have when scaffolding new SharePoint Framework client-side web parts. Then you will have React, and then especially for Patrick, how you can do that exactly the same with the SharePoint PnP JS library. So with that, you will be able to compare, and whether you use Angular or React or something else, we believe that you will be able to use the samples as boilerplate to implement CRUD operations in your web parts. And then the great thing is that if you're interested in comparing the benefit of using the SPPMP JS library comparing to doing everything with REST by yourself, you'll have a great comparison, like how does that look like and what's the benefit. So here you see the web part, which is so currently the one that you see on the screen is implemented using the SPPMP JS library. But if I pick, for example, the one in Angular, it will look exactly the same. And that's exactly the point, that they look exactly the same. And when you add them to the page, the only thing that you have to add is the name of your list. But we will have all of that described in a step-by-step manual. How do you set them up? And how do you get them to work on your machine? And the basic point is not really what it does, but actually the code. But so we will dive into code in a second. But first, let me show you what it does. So first, you create a new item in a list, right? So we have a create operation. And then when you do, you will see a new item added here with an ID and a title. Then you can read the item from the list. Right, so that's the R in CRUD. Then we also have the ability to read all items in the list. Currently, we don't support paging or all of that, but just an easy way to get all the items in the list. And I guess that by default in REST, for example, you will get 50 items, right? I guess that's the default. Then we also have the update operation. So the update updates the latest item that's in the list. So for example, we create now item with ID 4749, and then we will update the item 46. Okay, so that's a bug. There you go. And I might debug that live, but let's not do that because that's not the point, and I don't think we have the time. But the thing is that it illustrates you how you can implement these operations live, or in web parts. So if we go to the code, let me show you that, we'll have 4 web parts, as you've seen, one that illustrates doing that in Angular, one in doing that in no framework at all, one in doing that in React, and then one in the SharePoint PnP JS library. So for example, if you would like to compare what's the benefit of doing the SharePoint PnP JS library, let's open these two side by side. So first I open the SharePoint PnP JS library, and then on the other side, let me open the no framework at all. And let's, for example, say, so let's ignore the rendering, let's say if you would like to update an item. So here on the right-hand side, you have plain REST, which is which uses the HTTP client that you get from the web part. And then if you pick the update item here, you can see where we use the PnP JS. We really need to change the name. Is it a PnP JS library, PnP JS core library, core component? So here you can see how we achieve exactly the same. So on the right-hand side with plain REST, we basically construct the complete URL by passing in the URL of the web, underscore API, web list, and all that. Whereas here on the left-hand side, when we use the PnP component, we can basically have semantic approach to that, where we just say, okay, we want to have web, from web we want to have lists, from collection of lists we want to have that one by title, and then we want to get one item by ID, and then we want to get that and update it. So that is a way easier, way more error-prone approach to getting it, and it's shorter as well, because there are quite a few things that you don't need to take care of. So, for example, here, if you would like to see the update, in update, if you would do it manually yourself, you have to construct the payload with the right metadata, with the right typing and all of that, and inject that into your request. And you also need to take care of the right method, all the headers, accept headers, content types, and all that. If you use the SharePoint PnP.js library, the only thing that you have to do is you actually do this. So you say PnP item, get list, get the item, and then update. And it's there. So compare all of these lines here and how many errors you could do here, comparing to just one function call, which is update, right? So it makes things really easier. And that was actually the first time for me to give it a try, and I must admit I'm really positively surprised how easy it was just to get it to work in SPFx. You install it, and basically you follow the README on the repo page, you install it in project, and you're ready to go. And it has quite a few options and abilities for you to geek around. So I think that for majority of the cases, is good enough already. So the sample is almost done, and it will be available online for you with all of the code and a step-by-step description of how you get that to run really soon, really shortly. So stay tuned for updates. And if there are no questions, I'll give it back to Patrick.
All right, awesome, Waldek. Thank you. Great demo. Love to see the use of the SharePoint core library. And I, of course, very much agree with you. I think it's going to be a much easier approach than trying to remember having had to figure out how to make all those different bodies in JSON for to get things to work for the core library. I think it's going to be much easier, hopefully helpful, and hopefully give people a little bit better experience. Just not having to remember all that REST stuff and focus on the work they're trying to do. So let me try and bring the deck back up here. I am presenting. So that should be back up for folks. Please, somebody in the IM window, ping when we can see that again. Got it? Okay, cool. So thank you, Waldek, for that great demo. Really appreciate it. I think that's going to be a valuable tool for the whole community to be able to compare the different ways of doing things, both on the data side as well as the sort of front-end framework side. Because I know I get a lot of questions just in general around, should I use Angular, should I use React, or any of the others, and there isn't really one answer to that. It's a sort of a complex question of what fits for the project, what fits for the team, what fits for what you're actually trying to achieve. So that's going to be a really valuable resource, and look forward to seeing that once it's available. So now we got plenty of time this call for sort of the open Q&A discussion. So this is a great time if anybody has questions or comments or really just kind of anything. So sort of open forum. Feel free to come off mute and or type in the IM window and what's on your mind. You?
And obviously, if there's no questions, if there's no kind of nobody who wants to, we can absolutely close slightly early as well. So no worries about that one. But we want to have this opportunity every single week and every single call where possible.
I demand questions.
Okay, it's Nigel here.
Oh, it's Nigel. Okay, it's either Bill or Nigel for the whole time, so that's good.
Go on, Bill, after you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can hear as well.
Yeah, one step at a time. Nigel, you can start.
Okay. This technical community business, I've requested again an area for the Office Dev PnP people, and also the SharePoint framework areas, because it's chaos trying to find the bits you want and find out what's actually happening with the PnP and with the SharePoint framework, where everything is bundled in with all the other development issues. So I have put a thing on the technical community thing, asking for those two areas so that we can have our own areas, so we can easily keep an eye on what's going on, rather than have to sort of hunt through loads and loads of development questions, which are absolutely nothing to do with PnP and SharePoint framework. So if somebody can have a chat with Anna and get her to move her butt and get this sorted, that would be appreciated.
Yep, that's good feedback, and we need to actually have that feedback related to Anna using the official, the public channels as well. Because the thing is that they for some reason they wanted to drop the PnP groups because they wanted to put us under the technology and service groups, which is kind of fine. We can call ourselves as the SharePoint PnP, SharePoint Dev group as well. But it really comes down on what the community wants. We can suggest, but it's more around what the community wants and have an open discussion in the tech community if possible. So if there are others, like what Nigel is saying, if others wants to have a specific groups, please, if you, Nigel, for example, have a link to that discussion in the tech community site, that would be great to paste in the IR window, so that people can go and do a +1 on that.
Does the group have a Slack channel? We have a Gitter channel, I suppose we'll call it, in lieu of Slack. I'm hesitant to open up another forum to track, but if we all need a Slack channel, we can do that. Right now, I'd encourage folks to go to the Gitter and use that in the same. I know it's not the same or on parity with Slack, but for now, try and use the Gitter, and if that just becomes an obstacle, we can grow from there.
And quick comment around that one as well. So the Slack or Gitter, they work great if there are, let's say, a few tens of people who are active. The PnP group in Yammer had 4,700 members, and that meant that we were getting a lot of questions across different topics, and if you didn't follow up on the group every single day or twice a day, you were unable to follow up on what's actually happening. With Slack, the problem is that the discussions, or with Gitter, the discussions go so fast that you would have to follow up on that all the time. So if we would have that 4,000 members who are active. So that's one of the reasons why we've been hesitant with Slack or going Gitter through PnP. So the Gitter is more for the JavaScript core library right now, and obviously around any questions around the related topics. But the PnP has so many followers right now that I don't think that would scale to Gitter or Slack.
Yep, that's a great point. I mean, I know when I wake up in the morning, a lot of the folks on the Patterns and Practices core team are in Europe, and so then I've got 50 or 60 things I've got to read every morning. So it's tough sometimes to catch up, but if we multiplied that out to 4,000, it would be almost impossible. To Ryan's question, any way we can push to get Yammer back? I
don't think so.
Certainly don't have that power, and I wouldn't anticipate that.
I would say that it's an impossible fight. Somebody in the higher level, first of all, there was a decision that the community moves to network.office.com, and then somebody at pretty high level probably was like, hey, this is a great idea. Let's create a Microsoft communities, and now it's techcommunity.microsoft.com. Personally, I was asking at some point that why are we calling that tech community? What about the people who are not tech? Why can't we actually get them their own groups as well? But anyway, somebody somewhere made a big decision, and they're pushing that heavily. And we can either fight. yes, we were not consulted. So we can either fight for it and not use it. But then the question is, where would the people go?
So somebody big made a big decision. That's your point.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that.
He said somebody big made a big decision.
Yes.
A big decision made by somebody big.
Somebody who has a much higher payroll than we do. So. And to be fair, there are advantages. The key advantage of that net.tech community.microsoft.com is that every single content there gets indexed by the search crawlers. With Yammer, that wasn't the case. And if you have ever tried to use Yammer search, you know that that wasn't really that functional. So this way, the people can actually find the discussions and answers, hopefully, even though they wouldn't be registered. And that's really the key point.
But to kind of the general question, we are still figuring out the best way to work in the new tech community. I mean, I think we all had a pretty nice rhythm in Yammer. At least I felt I did, and I think others did as well. We don't have that yet in the tech community. It's a new thing, so we're still figuring out a little bit. It's definitely a little rough around the edges, I feel, right now. To Nigel's point, harder to find things. It's a little less focused. We'll get there. It's new. Bear with us in the transition. This is one of those, the hotel lobby is under construction, but hopefully it will be very nice once completed.
Let's hope that.
Just out of curiosity, how many folks on the call will be at Ignite? Cool. There's at least one. Two? Oh, -1. So now it's net zero now.
Oh, that's Waldek. Yeah, Waldek can't join. Well, because if nothing else, we can keep, for those who are dropping by, we have stickers. We have PnP stickers.
Yep, we got stickers. You can see what we look like in person.
Yes, not just the polished face in the social media.
No, I won't be wearing a suit and a white tie at Ignite.
With makeup, right?
No.
If I had known you were going to have stickers, I'd have gone.
Oh, there we go. Yes.
Well, Bill, we might have T-shirts that say using the JS core framework is a no-brainer.
Yeah. Yeah, there's still time to get them printed.
But cool, if you are going to be there, do stop by, say hi, meet us. We'd love to meet you. It's always neat to kind of put faces to names. I'm still doing that with my new team internally, in fact, so that's always kind of a neat, fun time. Well, it sounds like we don't have any other questions. I don't have anything else. Vesa, do you have anything to close out?
No, not for this one. I think we're good to go. And I think we're in a quorum related on switching the bi-weekly mode. We can actually, let's agree that we do next week, but we then do not do the Ignite week. So after next week, we'll switch to bi-weekly mode, and so that we don't have to do this call during Ignite.
Oh, I was going to do a live from Ignite call.
Yeah,
Fair.
I think that'll be quite good, actually. Can't you do one from Ignite?
We'll do one from Ignite, and let's switch it up in October.
Okay, that's fair. Easy. That's fair.
Because I think I'm working the booth at that point, so I was gonna see if we could get a camera working or something. We try not to be too fancy, though. All right. Well, hey, thank you, everybody. Appreciate everybody joining the call. Appreciate Waldek. Thank you so much for the demo. And if let's try and stay in touch across the various channels. And thanks, everybody. Vesa, do you want to close out?
Yeah, well, just as well, you almost said it. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and thank you for following up on things. We'll get the recording in the YouTube within 24 hours, so that's always our target. So if any of your friends want to see what we demoed or the Waldex demo, you can have a look on that. So thank you for joining, and hoping to see you again. Cheers. Bye-bye.